Welcome to Module 8, Teacher Communication Skills. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is communicating with difficult families. And this is something that comes up all the time when teaching, and it can be a very stressful experience. So let's think a little bit about how to ease that tension so maybe we come in a little bit more prepared to deal with those families. So the first thing we want to think about is the school atmosphere, making sure that when parents enter, they don't already feel stressed. We want it to be welcoming. We want to make sure that there's lots of displays that reflect cultures and races, ethnicities, and languages. And we also want to make sure that their child's work is up. We don't want to have just a few different kids up because it automatically makes them feel like, why don't they like my child? So we want to make sure everything is set up for success. We want to also make sure that if they're trying to find the classroom, they find it easily, that they don't get stressed just entering the school. When we meet with them, we want to be organized. And this is true anytime we meet with parents. You want to make sure that everything is at your fingertips so you can easily respond to whatever you're talking about. And make sure that when you bring them in for a conference about anything that's going on, this is not the first time you've met with the family or addressed the issue. They should know what's going to be discussed when they arrive. It shouldn't be a surprise. No one likes that type of surprise. And they should be ready to discuss it with you and have a productive conversation. So the first thing we also want to think about is our nonverbal communication. So you might be really nervous meeting with a parent, and you might be making a lot of physical movements that might make a parent feel that you're not open to communication. So you want to make sure that you're smiling, that you don't have your arms crossed, that you're leaning in a little bit and making eye contact, that you're not looking at your watch, that you really have time to talk to them. So you want them to feel welcomed into the conversation. The other suggestion is leaning forward slightly and not crossing your legs. That open, I am here to talk with you, nonverbal cue that you're giving them. The next thing you want to think about is the actual verbal communication you're doing. So don't use jargon. The more jargon you use, the more they feel that you're not actually having a conversation, that you know everything. You're really there to get their input. So you want to make sure that that open line of communication also applies to the way that you talk. Don't speak negatively about the school. Don't speak negatively about other teachers. Don't speak negatively about other children. You're not there to do that. You want to make sure that what you're saying is positive and make sure that you're not arguing with them. The other thing to think about is the use of silence. When you're not sure what to say, when you're not getting an answer, give it that Dora the Explorer silence where you wait just a minute or two longer than you would feel comfortable doing. A lot of times parents feel that they need to fill that silence, and a lot of times they'll fill it with information that can be extremely beneficial to you. So use that silence, especially when you're not sure what to say. So one of the things we also want to think about are some cultural cues that we're giving that we might not be sure about. So body language can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different cultures. So in the US, that strong eye contact is important, firm handshake is important, but in other cultures, that could be aggressive. Sometimes something as simple as nodding yes or no can mean different things in different cultures. So the more that you know the parents and the families in your classroom, the more you're going to be prepared to also do those cultural, verbal, and nonverbal cues that are going to make them feel welcomed into the conversation. Now, when we're communicating with challenging families, the first thing we need to do is we need to be empathetic. We need to walk with them in their shoes. We need to think about the situations that they're in. So, the other thing is meet with them face to face. Usually it's fine. They can write you an email and say all sorts of nasty things. But when they talk to you or when they see you face to face, it's much harder to do. Another thing we want to do is we want to acknowledge their concerns. We want them to feel heard. We want them to know that you're on their side. And if they come in like gangbusters and they're yelling, you don't need to match their energy. You're not there to fight with them. You're there to empathize. You're there to make connections. So you want to make sure you're bringing that energy down. And know when the conversation needs to end. And you can always end a conversation and say, I'm sorry, I have to go now, but I'd like to make another appointment with you when we can talk about this again. And that is really helpful when you feel like you're getting shaky or getting stressed. Um, when we're meeting with parents to discuss things like special needs, parents can really feel that you're picking on them and they can feel really defensive. So we really need to make sure that we're constantly empathizing and we're not going in with that idea of you're in denial, because they may be seeing something different than you are. So once again, I have to say, walking in their shoes is absolutely critical. Now, these are some tips. Don't apologize. Once you apologize, you admit that you've done something wrong. So try not to apologize, but you can still empathize. That sounds really hard. I feel badly you're going through that. So we want to make sure that we're not saying, I'm sorry, because once you say, I'm sorry, you've sort of lost the ability to keep talking. So keep that in your back pocket, the apologies. Um, Discuss the different strategies that you're using to help at school so that you're not just saying you need to do this. You're saying this is what we do. You can have an action plan. An action plan that the parents can do at home will make them feel less helpless. And a lot of times the reason people react with anger is because they're helpless. And make sure that you schedule a follow-up conference and decide the best way to do it. So they might be able to come in today, but they might be working. It might have been hard for them to get off work. So make sure you establish that before you end the conference. Now, safety is the number one priority. You need to feel safe in order to create partnerships. So, I've had a lot of experiences with this in the field. And one of the things that I've learned is don't be cornered. Um, you should be the one who sits closest to the door because if you need to leave, you don't want to be blocked by an angry parent. So make sure that you situate where you're sitting ahead of time. Listen to that little voice that tells you if something's going wrong. If you have a feeling that something's off, something is off. You can end the conference for a variety of reasons. Your safety is number one. If you know in advance that the conference might be confrontational, let other staff members and administration know so they can check on you and that you're not left in a situation where you feel unsafe. Don't close the door. Make an excuse to keep it open. You might say, somebody came in here with some cleaning things earlier. I just don't want to, get a headache from it. So I'm just going to keep the door open. Come up with a reason to keep that door open if you feel that you're in a situation that might not be the safest feeling. And keep your cell phone close by. A lot of times we say, don't look at your phone. But you should have something. If you don't feel that the situation is safe enough, keep the phone. Also, invite an administrator in, invite in another teacher, so that you're not doing it by yourself. Listen to that little voice so that you don't put yourself in a situation that can get too heated. So that's sort of the tips that I have that I've encountered and lots of different candidates and teachers have encountered in the field. And there's lots of different ones that come up. And what's interesting is there's a lot of differences between some of the issues that may come up when you're in kindergarten as opposed to daycare. So let's take a look at those. So when you're dealing with issues for conferences for children under the age of 4, one of the things to know is emotions may be higher. And the reason why is guilt. Parents feel guilty that they should be home with their child. And many parents have to work. There's a lot of benefits of children going to school. So parents might feel that sense of guilt that you're spending time with the child and they're not. So they already come in with that feeling. Another is that they may be jealous of your connection with the child. They may feel that you've become a surrogate mother or father or parent and that they've lost that the child would rather be with you. So they're already coming in with that sort of feeling of jealousy. Know that the conference may center more on social emotional needs rather than academic ones. And so that line can get blurred when you're saying, maybe your child has an issue with biting or a child has an issue. And that can make a parent feel very defensive when they start to think about behavioral issues. Know that you may be the first one to see issues that could affect learning. So when you're bringing something up, They might not have ever heard this before because you're the first person outside of the family who's seeing them in a group situation and in a regular group situation, a group situation that they're seeing every day. And these issues may not occur at home. Um, the other is parents may compare their child to other children, and that may make them very nervous. So they may come in and say, how come this child is doing this and mine isn't? And so they may come in with that real sense of worry. And that may cause that parent teacher conference to be much more confrontational than it would normally be. So, some issues that teachers may face dealing with conferences in kindergarten. Um, you're going to be the first basically academic conference that these families are ever going to deal with. And so you're going to get a lot of that. Is everything okay? What's going on? And if there's any issues, you may find that they overreact to what's going on because it's the first time they've heard it. The families may not be ready to hear about social or academic issues, and that's really can be the same in daycare. But a lot of children don't go to daycare. So they start in kindergarten, and it might be the first time they hear about this. Um, because there's that shift in conversations, they might need that reassurance about emotional and social issues that their child is doing fine. And once again, parents may compare their child to other children, which is just natural that we do this, but they want to make sure that everything's okay. So having that sort of sense about what's going on with families can really be helpful. Now, there's plenty of wonderful teacher conferences out there, and a lot of times you're going to walk away and you're going to be thinking, boy, I did a good job. And the parents know it. And sometimes you walk away and you think, oh my goodness, what went wrong? Well, after the conferences, make sure to give yourself a little break. Take care of yourself. Give yourself time to breathe and relax. And make sure that you have other people in your world who you can talk to about what went on in that conference while still keeping confidentiality. You might want to talk to other teachers in your school. You might want to talk to other peers. But getting feedback from other people is going to be extremely helpful because most likely you are not the only person who has ever gone through this. And you will encounter these issues over and over again in your career. And the more support you have, the more successful you will be.